This is a 28th video presentation for the Case Plant course. As you view this video, make notes of important information. Pause, repeat, and resume the video whenever necessary. Fun-de-Mendels of Genetics, Lesson 7.1, Plant Genetics. You have completed activity 7.1.2, Splitting Genes, in order to better understand gametogenesis in plants. This presentation will address terminology related to genetics and tools to predict heredity in offspring from sexual reproduction. Austrian monk Gregor Mendel's work with breeding peas was the first record of genetic discovery. It should be noted that Mendel was not a scientist, but his writings related to the research he conducted have become the foundation for the study of genetics. Mendel proposed theories for the basis of 4 laws for genetics. These include the laws of dominance, segregation, independent assortment, and unit characters. Genes are the simplest units in inheritance. Genes are carried in chromosomes, which you heard about earlier in this lesson during the birth of pollen and egg cells video. Genes are passed from one parent to offspring through the process of meiosis, fertilization, and mitosis. The genotype of an organism refers to the genetic constitution of an organism. It will be important to be able to distinguish between genotype and phenotype in Activity 7.1.3, Mendel's P simulation. Phenotype refers to an observed characteristic of an individual. Characteristics included in phenotypes often include visual appearance, such as plant height, colors, shapes, and appendices. Heredity is influenced by genes contributed from both parents. Each organism has 2 genes for the same trait, one from each parent. If both genes are the same, the organism is said to be homozygous for that trait. If the genes code for different expressions of the trait, the organism is called heterozygous. These terms will be illustrated in the following examples. If there are 2 different traits trying to be expressed, what are the mechanisms for the decision? Chance may be a logical assumption, but Mendel has provided evidence of genetic dominance among gene pairs. Therefore, traits can be predicted among dominant and recessive genes. When one gene overpowers another, it is said to be a dominant gene. According to Mendel's law of dominance, a dominant trait will be expressed in the phenotype of the organism, and a recessive trait will be silenced. The silenced recessive gene is still present in the genotype and may be passed on to future offspring. If an offspring receives 2 recessive genes for the same trait, it will be expressed in the recessive trait rather than the dominant trait. Knowledge of dominant and recessive traits can help you predict the genotype and phenotype of offspring. Here are some rules to remember as the Punnett square is introduced. Each gene is represented by a letter, either capital or lowercase. Each gene makes up half of a pair. A capital letter represents a dominant gene. A lowercase letter represents a recessive gene. Use the law of dominance and the key provided here to predict the corresponding genotypes. Pause the video to record your responses before viewing the correct answers. Resume the video to check your answers. The homozygous dominant genotype should be represented by 2 capital P's. The heterozygous genotype for purple should have 1 capital P and 1 lowercase p. The recessive white genotype should be 2 lowercase p's. The Punnett square will be the tool used to predict offspring from breeding pairs of genes. To build foundation knowledge related to dominance, use a Punnett square. One homozygous parent's genes are shown at the top as 2 capital P's. The other homozygous parent's genes are shown at the left as 2 capital P's. Remember, each parent contributes 1 gene to the offspring. Pause the video while you fill in the practice Punnett square. What percent of offspring would have homozygous dominant traits for purple flowers? What percentage of offspring would have purple flowers? Of course, the predicted percentage of purple flowers is 100%. If the parent plants produce 100 new offspring, all 100 would have genetic traits for purple flowers. This Punnett square will illustrate how recessive genes are still part of the genetic makeup, even though parent plants do not show phenotypic characteristics. In this example, both parents are heterozygous. This means that in half of all matings, each parent will contribute a capital P, and in the other half of all matings, each parent will contribute a lowercase p. This Punnett square will represent all the possible combinations of offspring genotypes in this situation. Remember, the small p represents white flower color. Pause the video to fill in this Punnett square in your notes. Resume the video to check your answers. The recessive gene, the lowercase p, is found in 75% of the crosses. However, when paired with a dominant gene, the capital P, the recessive lowercase p will only be expressed in the phenotype 25% of the time. Therefore, we can predict that 75% of the offspring will have purple flowers and only 25% will have white flowers. As a review, mark or highlight 3 key points in your notes that are important to remember from this presentation. List 2 ideas or concepts that relate to previous knowledge. List any questions you have about this topic. Discuss these questions with your instructor. Keep any notes you have from this presentation organized and available for use throughout the course. Through Activity 713, Mendel's P simulation, you will practice your genetic prediction skills using a simulation software to learn about the role genetics play in plant production. This will help you understand dominant and recessive genes and how they relate to plant genotype and phenotype. Your teacher will provide instructions for you and your partner to complete 2 experiments related to genetic inheritance in pea plants.